What profession has the strongest reputation for promiscuity among coworkers? Hospitality industry. I know a girl who worked part-time as a hotel maid in college. She met a young, good-looking guy who was only staying a couple of days until his new place was ready. Invited her out. They didn't sleep together, but he texted her and asked to meet up again. He offered her a very generous salary to basically be his exclusive call. He could text her anytime, outside of class hours, and she had to go to him. It's been over a year and it's an ongoing arrangement. Story 2. At the risk of ruining a good stereotype, it's not nurses. The average nurse is around 45 and a mother who has to balance working a 12-hour shift and then getting home in time to make sure the kids ate what she had previously prepared before getting them in bed. Then she has to get herself to bed because she has to do it again at 6:45 in the morning. Days off are spent doing loads of laundry, cleaning house, and catching up on the lost sleep. Source: I'm a nurse of 35 years. While I was a male, and a childless male until I remarried and gained a stepson, even I had little time or energy for such. Are there wild nurses? Sure, I've worked with a few, but in about the same proportion as folks in other lines of work. Also, in 35 years of nursing, I know of around 5 to 6 encounters that were within the hospital. There just isn't time. We are too busy taking care of your grandma and making sure she gets to come home to her family. Having said that, I did work at a factory one time where what seemed to be half the shift went to their cars and had intimacy in lunch break. Story 3. State-level politics is a sweet spot for that kind of thing, and sleaze in general. Local politics is too close to home. Congress has too many eyes on them, but if someone wants power plus discrete side action, being in a state capital is great for that. Capitals are not usually the most happening places in their states. Hello there, Frankfurt, Salem, Montpelier, Albany, Jefferson City. So there's not much else to do when the legislature is in session but drink and do it with a what happens here stays here agreement, keeping the tawdry stuff away from prying eyes. Story 4. Factory workers. I work at an automotive factory, and I can't tell you how many scuffles I've seen at the gate because someone's husband or wife comes up here and catches their significant other walking out with their side piece. Also, I've heard of 3 instances where supervisors get side pieces and have accidentally set inappropriate pics to the work group chats because they got the messages mixed up. Story 5. Apparently, dentists are dental hygienists. I had some friends from college that went on to become dental hygienists, both attractive girls, and they ended up leaving after having similar experiences at multiple dental offices. They would be invited to conferences and team-building weekend trips that all turned out to be just excuses to sleep with their coworkers. Story 6. Advertising. It attracts smart, creative, and attractive people, then places them in a high-pressure environment with long hours and often extensive business travel. Plus, there tends to be a lot of after-hours get-togethers with booze. In my first agency, there were 28 employees and 4 ongoing affairs. The agency president was caught by his wife banging yet another account executive. So he checked himself into a hotel with a bottle of champagne, a pint of ice cream, and a pistol and did the predictable thing. And through the course of my career, I've had probably 20 or so proposals from colleagues, clients, and vendors. Some subtle, some explicit. I mean, when the cute young art director says, "We need to work on this project over the weekend," my parents' beach place would be perfect for this. There's no mistaking intent. I'm personally amazed I made it through 30 years in the business without a fixation or an affair to my name. Story 7. Modeling. I tried it as a young 19 or 20-year-old, and I was technically already old, lol. That many young people were all beautiful but both insecure and overconfident at the same time was just mayhem. All it took was a party or two, and God forbid if you ever walked shows at the major fashion weeks where apartments are shared by sometimes 8 or 9 others, and yeah. I was a massive introvert and didn't smoke, so less other models, but I got hit on a lot by the older professionals, especially the photographers. Glad I was only in there for a moment. Story 8. I worked in retail, and if it's a big enough store, like Circuit City, there's a good amount of intimacy going on. Pretty much every woman who worked there, unless they were married, were getting it on with at least 1 or 2 other guys there, and a few who really got around to several guys. And that's just from the stories I know. There was likely way more. Interestingly enough, I was probably at one of the heavily male-dominated stores that had 2 female managers being just as inappropriate with the guys. One basically did a whole tease in an after-work event, and the other was just constantly hitting on another manager to where he complained and she got reassigned to another store. Story 9. More specific than a profession really, but Amazon in particular. I've worked in restaurants as well, and they live up to their reputation in this thread, but Amazon specifically was on the same level. It went doubly so for me and my coworkers on the night shift. 10-hour shifts and a reversed sleep schedule meant that your coworkers became your social group. Plus everyone's in decent shape, given the fact that you need to power walk several hours a night while lifting things and going up and down stairs, and it's a high-paced, high-stress environment. Come to think of it, those are exactly the reasons I saw so much promiscuity in the food service industry, as well. Seems there's a few commonalities that lend themselves to sleeping around. Story 10. Retail or customer service has to be up there. I've seen so much of it. If it's not coworkers kissing someone one day to the next, they're openly doing it all over the place. Even I, as a maybe 5 to 6 out of 10, got so many at work from different people. I walked in on two married to different people managers doing it multiple times. I walked in on a manager doing it with two guys at the same time. Even today, in my mid-40s, I still find a way to do it with people in those types of jobs, usually accidentally. Story 11. Well, I had a manager at Wally World who was caught sleeping with over at least 17 coworkers on and off the clock. She would try to tempt the new hires that she thought were young and attractive, men and women, with promises of drinks, substances, and fun back at her place. If that didn't work, she would wait for them to accumulate points for bad attendance and then offer to take them away for a price. Sleep with her and whoever she wishes, and she would shave off a couple points. Apparently, she got caught at least 4 times on the clock and in the store fooling around. Unfortunately, those times the person who caught them either turned a blind eye and kept it to themselves or ended up joining them. She was eventually caught doing it in the store with someone with actual morals because she was reported and fired. I don't think they called the police, they just tried to cover it up. Story 12. Ted. Throughout time, there has always been one cutting-edge profession to which hot girls like Tiffany have flocked. Shall I walk you through the history? It all started 2.5 million years ago. Man was a hunter, so the hottest profession of the day, gatherer. As man mastered technology, the hottest profession of the day evolved, and then man took to the skies. And so hot women put on high heels and became stewardesses. And then the man said, life is hard. I should start taking lots of prescriptions. And so hot girls rolled into doctors' offices looking sexy enough to render the very hardness pills they peddled ironically redundant. So now, farmer girls are today's hottest profession. Story 13. I hate to talk crap about my own profession, but nurses. A nurse's job is exhausting and it makes maintaining a relationship outside of work a big challenge. And if there isn't a concerted effort on both sides, then it's easy for there to be distance and resentment that grows and makes cheating more likely in the workplace. Especially when there's the element of shared trauma, which is a powerful bond. It makes the likelihood of cheating go way up. I think I know 2 nurses who haven't been divorced. All the rest of my colleagues have at least 1 divorce under their belt. Most of them have 2 or more. The other part of it is because there's a tendency for society to objectify nurses, so because of that, the profession's reputation for promiscuity is way overblown. Story 14. I don't know if this is still the case, but the big 4 consulting firms were way more promiscuous than people realized. If you came in right out of college, it can basically be like living in a university lifestyle while suddenly having seemingly disposable income. If or when you get to the higher levels of a firm, there are lots of late nights and non-standard working conditions. The number of executives that have been divorced or have had some sort of an affair was staggering. I knew so many folks who had a side piece depending on where they were traveling. Story 15. Aside from what's already been said, any industry with high salaries and lots of conventions, medical and insurance come to mind. It was so bad in the restoration insurance industry that my old boss sat me down for the talk before I attended my first one. I went something like, you're married and I feel like you're both happy, so I want to warn you that I've seen countless marriages destroyed at these events. He wasn't wrong. That crap was wild. One of my former coworkers met his now wife during a group intimacy. Story 16. I worked at a sleepaway camp for a few summers. I thought all the stuff in movies or books was exaggerated, but, no. I was never a part of it, but finding out, after the fact, what my co-counselors had been up to was a wild realization. Furthermore, in a conversation with the camp director, she told me that she'd considered putting up a hammock at the edge of the woods, but had been shut down so immediately and fervently by directors of the neighborhood camps that she quickly dropped the idea. Story 17. So everyone is nailing it with restaurants and hospitality. I really should do an AMA on this. 20 years ago, I worked on a Royal Caribbean ship as a barback or deckhand, etc. Holy crap, so take everything everyone is saying about restaurants and hospitality, add in many, many different races and nationalities, and all of a sudden, yeah, it's like that. Also, if you've been on a cruise as a passenger, you'll be shocked to find out just how much is going on out of your view. Most of the time, there are whole cultures developing on the boat that the guests have no clue about. Story 18. Restaurant and bar employees. Many years ago, there was a group of girls who worked at my local Lucille's at the Long Beach Town Center. You know, tight jeans and checkered tops. They'd sleep with everyone in my group of friends but me. Not for having any lack of game. I guess they just weren't down with me, but I guess it's better than potentially getting an STD. My buddies told me that these chicks were down to do everything. Would see them almost every week getting drinks at TGI Fridays and flirting with a new batch of dudes. Story 19. In my life experience, it's 100% restaurants. I was so successful, even the lesbian at one of the restaurants I worked at let me have intimacy with her. I think some of the people saying IT have just not worked the right kind of IT job yet. I was the only IT guy on site at this ad sales office for a big company, and I was surrounded by really attractive women in sales. So many of them were flirty, but I wasn't single at the time, so I never took a shot at anyone. Knowing what I know now, I wish I tried to bring 1 or 2 of them home to my partner to mess around together. Story 20. I worked in IT at an exceptionally large hospital system out west. I was hands-on IT, no pun intended. I felt that, without a doubt, everyone in the hospital system was having intimacy. Nurses were having intimacy with doctors. Nurses were having intimacy with other nurses. Heck, there was even a nurse that I knew who had intimacy with some of her male patients, even if they were married. And it seems like the men didn't complain. I even had nurses that tried to pick me up. That being said, I am an extrovert, so I'm not your typical IT nerd introvert. Story 21. My wife has run a private, respectable massage business for the last 25 years. She's on several massage boards, and people are constantly trying to join the massage business or only trying to use it for intimacy work. My wife even still gets called occasionally on her business line asking for massages late at night, after 10 p.m., with promises to pay even more money, which is code for I'll pay you even more to have intimacy with me late at night. My wife blocks them all. Fortunately, she doesn't get a lot of new clients because she has a large client base, so she doesn't have to deal with the creeps. She's even had to end a couple of massages early in her lifetime. They start talking about inappropriate things and she just ends it right then and there and still charges them the full fee for the entire session. Story 22. Christian companies. Procter & Gamble comes to mind. They, off the books, pretty much won't promote you unless you marry another member of the company or if you're not going to church. And they rarely hire somebody who's a fresh college graduate, ready to be taken advantage of. Combine that with a few other random factors and they create a culture where young people who don't want to get married yet, but are afraid to leave because the company convinces them that this is the best opportunity they will ever get, the coworkers just have intimacy constantly. Story 23. I don't know. The company I worked at with the most shenanigans was a financial services company, but I think it had to do with a lot of young people working closely together rather than the financial services itself. A good friend of mine was a GM for a chain restaurant. Yeah, there was a lot of intimacy going on, both inside and outside the restaurant. I left that job over 20 years ago, but I still won't eat there because I know what goes on in the front of the house and in the kitchen. Gross. Story 24. Direct care. I saw so much cheating and promiscuity, mainly in the mid-shift. I worked overnights, and the 4 to 12 shift would head out to the bars and clubs. 2 LVNs would sleep with every new person that walked in the door. One even had a collection of inappropriate pics of the coworkers she slept with. This particular LVN was scandalous. She was married to a great guy and got hung up on this new guy. Both he and she were pilfering client meds. They got caught, and he ratted her out. She got fired and lost her license. She would even bring this guy around her husband and kids. The theory was that the kid she was sleeping with got her pregnant because beforehand she had the hardest time getting pregnant. She sees this guy and boom, pregnant. Most of those coworkers ended up miserable and divorced and owing a ton of child support. Story 25. Summer camp staff. I haven't been personally involved, but I lived nearby during the summer and had a few friends who worked at the camp. We'd chill out in their free hours, a few days off that they'd have. One of the guys had slept with pretty much every worthy coworker, even though he was average. His theory was that he was good with the kids and that it was some sort of a love potion for the ladies once they saw him take care of small children, play with them, and saw how the kids liked him back. Not to mention the word of mouth after fooling around. That's a relatively confined space with not that many options, so the word gets around. Story 26. Working in a bookstore. I worked at a Borders bookstore in a college town for several years. It was unreal how much went on with the staff. Booksellers, music staff, and cafe staff all intermingling. It was amazing. That's where I met my wife of nearly 22 years. We're the only couple that got married while working there that are still together. Additionally, it was routinely voted the best place in town to pick up a potential partner, so it wasn't just the staff who were doing it. Story 27. Former bartender here. Can confirm. Busboys hitting on hostesses, servers flirting with each other all shift, managers doing it on the DL, thinking no one knows. We all know. And everyone flirting with the kitchen because, yeah, they can get your food out faster if they like you. Skip the line for a refire. It was strange and stressful, and there were so many laughs and good times. I miss the night shift vibe. I can't think of any other work environment that has more energy than restaurants and bars, especially because most of the staff are between 17 to 25 years old. Story 28. Retail and live music. Retail is hilarious because people work there for various crap wages to support their family or household, but just can't get coworker X out of their mind and mess everything up. And guess what? You're still working retail when it all falls apart. Also live music to a lesser extent. I'm not saying musicians never fool around with other musicians, but other musicians know how much of a pain in the bum we all are for various reasons, so the audience gets to reap the reward. Story 29. If I went with my friends' experiences, I'd say the restaurant or bar or nursing. My friend, who's a male RN, said that since male nurses are so few and far between, it wasn't a surprise if he or the other male nurse in the hospital wing had one-night stands or frequent fling with other nurses that they worked with. My other friend who works in the restaurant or bar sector said that, at least in his restaurant, he would very regularly sleep with the waitresses after work. He's moved between a couple of restaurants, and in the current one he works at, he has slept with at least 50% of the female staff. They mainly bonded through complaining about customers and the kitchen staff. Can't say anything about my line of work. Most of the people I work with are married with families of their own, and most of them are around 20 to 30 years older than me. Story 30. Generally, pick a high-stress job with long hours. Bonus points if you have to deal with a lot of unreasonable people. There's some level of isolation. physical or social, and if there's some level of elitism in the job. Restaurants had a lot of them. High stress, long hours, unreasonable people, but probably gets worse if you get to the medium high-end places. Elitism without the lowering of stress or unreasonable people that comes from being high-end and being able to have a little more control over the dining room. Hospitality can hit a few. High stress, unreasonable people, but put them in an isolated space and or dealing with entitled people, say resorts or cruise ships, there's going to be more of it. Hospitals probably see a lot of it. They're highly trained, elite people dealing with people at their worst while working long hours where the stress is literally life and doom some of the time. Story 31. Nursing home employees. I've worked in a hospital and several nursing homes. I've never heard of affairs or friends with benefits between coworkers when I was at the hospital. On the other hand, a good portion of nursing home staff, including myself at one point, were having intimacy with a coworker. Most of the time it was auxiliary staff, housekeeping, dietary, activities, central supply. Every once in a while it'd be a nurse or a CNA sleeping around. It was 50-50 whether it was cheating or not. Fun fact, the last facility I worked at actually installed cameras monitoring our smoking area, behind a storage shed and behind the dumpster. Why? Because at our sister facility, multiple staff got caught during the act in said locations. They only found out about the cameras because the Don, director of nursing, called me out for vaping where I wasn't supposed to. I tried denying it, but she showed me the footage. Story 32. Based on my experience working at a Target store in a small town in Northern California when I was 19, it was definitely retail. There was a bunch of young people who were also attending the local community college, who were bored in a small town and probably desperate to leave. Then you had the creepy 30-somethings in management who had basically chosen that as their path in life and often got bored at home. One of the guest service managers knocked up a much younger cashier. They married and divorced. Our store technician, the guy who maintained the building, was a veritable creep. There wasn't a single girl he wouldn't pursue, often multiple at a time. And those are only 2 examples of dozens. It was wild. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 33. As weird as it sounds, when I was 18 to 22, I worked as a car wash attendant and got a lot of action, mostly from Peruvian and Puerto Rican women in East Hartford, CT, when I used to live there. I got fired for having intimacy with this little kid's mom in one of the wash bays after I gave away a bunch of free washes to her every week. I probably lost the company close to $28,000 for the entire time I worked there, giving washes away to hot chicks. Best minimum wage job I've ever had in my life. You'd give free washes away to pretty girls, they'd pull back around and thank you, they'd give you a card with their phone number, and it was on. I miss those days. Story 34. Male nurse. As a student nurse, I made friends with all the girls in my course and slept with their friends. They were gateways to new social circles. It was very common that at parties or social events in a student accommodation, the women outnumbered the men 10 to 1. As a nurse, I've slept with women in every ward or care home I've worked in. You work mostly with women, mostly make friends with women, and meet new women all the time. All that female contact teaches you an awful lot. Story 35. Private trainer or coach. You get paid sometimes by young women to help them get fitter. If you look a bit aesthetic and you're confident, it's pretty easy to have some at-home cardio. Cooks. Be confident and tell them that you make the best food in town, then arrange a day where you cook dinner and watch a movie after. Food that goes with wine is a game changer. Story 36. Back in the mid-90s, I worked for Budweiser as a summer job and oversaw festivals around a major city in the Midwest. This was before the internet, so imagine being the Bud guy whose job it was to change kegs and serve beer, while wearing that ridiculous hat and shirt. As the festivals drew to a close, we'd give out beer for free to finish off a keg. It always morphed into concert mentality. Women would do almost anything for that hat or shirt. Side note, cops would always flock at the end of their shift to swing by for a free beer. On a few occasions, they'd give me their business card with a let him go if pulled over signature in the back. I still have 2 of them, and I know they'd never do that today. Good times. Story 37. Fitness trainer for sure. Having a fit and healthy and toned individual that you see on a regular basis who's paid to stare at you to see if you're doing the exercises correctly, gotta have some strong tension there. Hell, the parts manager at my auto warehouse told me he would get multiple chicks hitting on him. Definitely had to reconsider my job at the moment. Lol. Story 38. In this day and age for men, anything that makes you stand out and look exciting can be attractive. You still need to look relatively good, but police officer, dealer, soldier, and hunter are all ironically super sexy despite what certain movements say. Emphasize more on the muscularity and manhandling aspects than the mundane or tool aspects. Women love it if you're at police and your job is holding down offenders and dragging them to the cruiser. Not so much if you're on desk duty or a taser boy. It makes you sound masculine and it makes panties wet when they connect that to them being manhandled. Story 39. I was a young FFT2 wild blend firefighter. 18 to 24 were the good years. Fighting with a crew that had Type 2 initial attack Hummers and some of the best gear you could have. The owner was loaded. Now while on fire, we were not allowed to drink, even while off the clock, but on our days off, i.e. downtime, we were. Our boss made sure we would always be ready to go with gear, so we kept our fire rigs at home, or he made sure we were in a company rig. On the way home, we would pull into whatever bar was in the town closest to the fire we just fought. Our age did not matter. We were never courted. Never got so much action in my life than I did during that time frame. Working as a lowly government contractor, providing consulting and emergency management or mitigation to local municipalities like I did, before being diagnosed with heart failure and becoming disabled, nope, not at all. Collecting disability while fishing on the lake, surprisingly decent. Except I can't have intimacy anymore due to my heart, so there's that. Story 40. A male elementary teacher, male nurse, or male camp counselor. Calm down, I'm not being creepy. In all three professions, women are much more common. Many of the men in these fields are gay, at least in Chicago, and it allows a non-schmuck guy to show they care and are sensitive. It works, is all I can say, and God help you if you're a male teacher on the west side of Chicago. If you're good with our kids, the single moms will be on you like white on rice. Story 41. I'd say the restaurant business in general, bartending especially, everyone in that business sleeps with everyone. But male bartenders get customers offering intimacy all the time. I know plenty of guys who've had a hotel room key left in the tip jar, and plenty more who have had intimacy with a customer in the bathroom whom they just met that night and never saw again. My 80-year-old boss was getting a little something I back from some woman one night. That I know of. It probably has happened a lot. The old schmuck was probably pouring dust at that point. Story 42. When I was starting university, I worked in a small nightclub as a busboy or barback. It was insane. Intoxicated customers were the low-hanging fruit and not really my style, but between bartenders, coat-check girls, waitresses, bottle girls, etc., it was all about close encounters. When I got older, I was working in contract-based engineering where my company had me go out to locations around the country for gigs between a couple of days and several months. I was with someone at the time, but from what I saw, it's an opportunity to meet a lot of fun people and have a good time. Story 43. Not guaranteed, but I do HVAC. When you go to someone's house and you fix their heat or AC, it gives them a special feeling of gratitude. Sometimes excessive amounts of gratitude. Lol. Many years ago when I was still green as grass in the trade, some lady who was freshly divorced had no heat and I went and fixed it. She was slightly mechanically inclined and tried a few tricks on her boiler, but nothing seemed to work for her. I literally walked in, smacked the burner motor one good time, and got it to free up, and said I'd return tomorrow bright and early Sunday morning with a new burner motor for her boiler. When I got there and put the new one on, it was a Sunday, and at one point we were both on our knees, but it sure as hell wasn't for praying on a righteous Sunday. Story 44. I live in Colorado, and one of the first mountain towns outside Denver is Evergreen. Evergreen has a reputation for where divorced wealthy people live. Every other shop is a yoga studio or Pilates, and the rest are new artisan craft shops funded by recent divorce payouts. I was a contractor, finished commercial space and some residential. The 20s were good. The ladies loved the tool belt, truck, decisiveness, and good shape. Story 45. My beach house roommate was an FBI agent, and I literally had to run interface for him while he peeled the women off himself. It didn't hurt they looked like a blonde version of Christopher Reeve before the accident. One time I came across a gaggle of nurses who were openly groping him, and I said, "Hey dude, you didn't tell them that old I'm an FBI agent story, did you?" "Really? You girls bought that?" He works for Xerox. Like most guys who do not want to be clock-blocked, he actually thanked me later. Story 46. I think it's fair to say that grocery stores can be that, since you can work around people, but not necessarily with them. This is a nice buffer that lends itself to casual fooling around. With that said, none of them were quite like Whole Foods. I remember one young lady describing it as so inappropriate, and it was one of the funniest things I've heard. Great times, not just because of the willingness for the ladies to fool around, but it seemed to attract really cool people too. There were times where I would just offer a ride to someone because it was snowing or raining, and I decided to drive instead of riding the bike that day. Then they'd invite me in, and in a matter of minutes, we were getting down. Although there were numerous times I missed out because I didn't notice they were interested in me as well. I definitely regret missing out. Lol. Not sure if it's quite like that anymore. Story 47. I work more in sound post-production, but the few times I was on movie sets, there were always some affairs, like the sound engineer with a script girl. Working on movie sets is quite peculiar. You become quite isolated from the rest of the world and stay in your bubble. Everyone is a bit in a rush and tense, so there's a need to decompress. You with the sample people for weeks. Sometimes you sleep at the same places as them. Hello, cheap hotels. You spend some time carpooling to go to the locations, sometimes hours for remote places like forests or mountains. You learn to coordinate with the other technicians. Emotions can run high when there are emotional scenes, arguments, where did you put the gaffer tape, or lack of sleep. Globally, it's a matter of promiscuity and relieving some tension. Story 48. People getting impure a lot in hospitals. Most of the doctors and nurses I know are a bunch of rich kids obsessed with the world of drinking and intimacy in their free time, even though they get tired after rough hours of working. It happens in Indonesia. No matter how much people say it's a Muslim-majority country, people always find a way to have intimacy and get naughty. Even in Islamic boarding schools where it separates boys and girls, boys get hungry and become gay, and girls become lesbians. It happens all the time. Story 49. Jobs where actually having to sleep on the job site or that provide a place to have intimacy, undisturbed. More intimacy would be going on in any job if there was a place to actually do it. I dated an ER doctor who told me that there's a huge amount of office intimacy going on in hospitals among staff. Cruise ships, hotel staff, etc. I also hear real estate agents do this a lot because of the empty houses providing a place to have intimacy. Story 50. I work in a hospital, emergency room, and there's a ton of people fooling around. It rarely causes drama, but occasionally, two people get together that shouldn't have. Sometimes it's because one of them is low-key crazy or one of them is married. Our medical director is married and sneaking around with two nurses. The two nurses were best friends, but neither of them knew that the other was also sleeping with him. There was a lot of drama to be spilled that month. Working in the same department for 10 years, I'm guilty of hooking up with a handful of coworkers, but anytime someone says to me, "Don't mess where you eat," I respond with, "A few skid marks never ended anyone." Story 51. Doctors. My parents were both doctors, and most of our family friends are families with both parents being doctors or one doctor and another healthcare professional, nurse, psychologist, etc. Doctors train for years and have demanding hours, so your chances of meeting someone outside of work is pretty low. A lot of people are still in training when they're in their late 20s, so lots of people get together in med school or during early training placements. Also, anything where you have to cohabit with your colleagues, like summer camps or field work, can lead to relationships. Story 52. It's grocery store employees and fast casual restaurant employees. I worked at a large grocery store a long time ago, and out of 200 total store employees, there were at least 20 to 30 of them that were actively or had within a previous 6-month period dated or fooled around. Having spoken to other grocery store employees, it's a common refrain. And having dated a handful of servers or bartenders, as well as befriended or worked with many others, it's very common there as well. Story 53. Anything with high adrenaline and long hours can lead to intense bonds, like in police work or prisons. There are studies that suggest high adrenaline activities early in a relationship can affect hormones and help people bond quicker and faster. The same can be applied to jobs where such situations happen frequently. I went into a job role along those similar lines, and we had a whole morning of training where we were told this, followed by "please don't sleep with colleagues," basically, where we were warned that we would be building false realities with each other, and once we left the job, there wouldn't be a solid enough foundation to stay together. Very interesting. Story 54. A work colleague of mine used to work in a hotel. He had no official job position and was doing all kinds of odd jobs, depending on what was needed. Porter, waiter, cooking, housekeeping, whatever was needed at the moment, and sometimes he had bar duty. He hated bar duty because the female guests would always hit on him, and he couldn't say yes because getting caught sleeping with a guest would have cost him his job. Curiously, nobody ever hit on him when he did any other job. Story 55. He used to be a dental assistant, and anytime I would tell a guy, the first thing he would ask is, "You get to wear a sexy uniform?" I have no idea why people think root canals and extractions would require a sexy outfit. I'm now a nurse or midwife. My husband had a coworker who was running a job at a huge hospital, not where I work, thank God. He told all the other guys that the nurses were constantly flirting with him. He also said he knows for a fact that all nurses love the Johnson and are flirty. My husband asked him how many nurses he had intimacy with. His answer was none. Also, we are literally paid to be nice to everyone. It's a huge part of our job. Don't be flattered by it. You aren't special. Story 56. At 39, I took a break from my soul-destroying career in healthcare middle management and did a PT course. I've always loved the gym because I was a fat kid, socially awkward with no discernible sporting ability. I was almost immediately put in charge of the gym I trained at, while also able to offer my services as a trainer. Perhaps I was less intimidating than other PTs. Perhaps my gone inside vibe was irresistible. Either way, I was propositioned 2 or 3 times a week, often by people I found very attractive. I would have unashamedly quadrupled my body count in 3 months if I hadn't been married. Story 57. Being a tattoo artist, apparently, comes with a lot of strange encounters. I've been in the profession nearly 10 years, and I've seen everything. From people wanting their privates tattooed for pleasure and telling me I can play with it beforehand to sending me photos of said private. I've had 2 clients touch me while tattooing and one who tried to get his hand down, offered intimacy as payment, and couples trying to bring you into their weird intimate lives. Like the one guy who said he needs Rachel's sissy boy tattooed on his face and asked me to humiliate him as I tattooed him. Getting asked to do massages because the place over the road isn't available. Apparently a lot of stupid guys think tattooists are freaky and up for it or wild. I'm the most vanilla person I know. Story 58. Maids. To that extent, people think everything related to maids is freaky. There's that mob alley in Minecraft. His purpose is to find items as a player gives to him and then find more of that type of item. So someone drew him as a maid and people exploded with rage that they would objectify even this mob. For Christ's sake, this is just a maid outfit because he's serving the player. I am annoyed by how dumb people on the internet are sometimes, almost all the time. But really, maids are a cliche of an intimate servant in pictures, and it's okay. But people really think it's real that every maid is going to do intimate things. Really. Story 59. Massage therapy. I swear, I don't get the jokes often because the spa I work for is very nice, but I've gotten stupid questions about happy endings. I even had some person do it on my sheets while I was waiting for him outside the door to give him water. It's annoying because we as LMTs take steps to change the context people have in their heads. For example, calling it a table instead of a bed, or we are therapists and not masseurs. We've had some people be flat out on top of the sheets. It can be a nightmare sometimes. Story 60. Depends, really. Barmaids are one fantasy, but there are also teachers, policewomen, and air stewardesses. I almost got myself arrested back in university. I saw this hot WPC. I thought she was a student in my half-intoxicated state, so up I went, and my line was, "Hi, my name is Chris. I've been a very bad boy. I need to be punished." The reply was, "What have you done?" I got a little nervous and asked if she was a student. She was not, so I told her, "I'm sorry, I thought she was a student and it was a come on." I then asked what time she got off and where she would like to punish me. Then she said, "No, but thanks for finding me attractive." At that point, we said goodnight, and me and my mates went on to the club, and she went off to do whatever hot WPCs do of an evening. Story 61. Call center employees. I normally have a deeper voice that sounds really annoyed, but I changed it to sound sweet and almost like an anime girl. This guy, I did health insurance call center work, kept asking me to repeat his name, saying my voice was cute, and suddenly I heard weird sounds. He asked to stay on the phone with me and said I could pull up and he'd pay me for my time. My voice dropped. "Sir, you're on SSI and Medicare. I don't think I'll be getting much out of you." And then I transferred him. Story 62. Room service waiter in a high-end hotel. More than one moment. Once, two guys with two high-end didn't realize they were, but each visit up with champagne and oysters, progressively more came off until the final visit. They were on the bed doing something. I was offered to taste them right then and there on that third visit up. Very hot, but still awkward and not as hot as it all sounds when you're working and it's busy and you're young and don't have much worldly knowledge. I said thanks, but no thanks. Took their generous cash tip instead. I was all of 19. Sounds hot now, in retrospect. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.